Well, hello there. Look at that. Storytime Sunny all over this, hosting the channel before I even clicked it and sent it live. Thank you so much, Sunny. I really appreciate the host and the lurk. Hey, little dude, I didn't miss you. I was just getting to Sunny since she was first, but I'm really glad to see you here too. How is everyone this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon? Whichever it happens to be. No matter what time it is or wherever you are, it's obviously bedtime. And I'm glad you're here with me for bedtime. Hope everyone is having an excellent lead up to the holidays. I got tortured with the lead up to the holidays all night last night. Most of the afternoon, too. The great holiday baking had begun, and my kid and my best friend spent the whole day baking, and I was banned. I was banned from the kitchen. Can you believe that? Had to smell the cookies and the baking and see them, and I wasn't allowed to come near it. Terrible, I tell you. You might think I was cursed or something. Which, by the way, I totally am. I am aggressively terrible at baking. All I need to do is get close enough, and whatever they were baking would be ruined. Hey, Biscuit. Hey, Nameless. Glad to see both of you here. I've missed you guys. I've noticed that you weren't around. But, I hope everything's going well for you and that you were just busy with finals or something like that. But I'm very glad you're here now. But yeah, I've got a terrible curse. If I get near the process of baking, you end up with cookies that become goo and charcoal all at the same time. Or bread and cakes and whatnot that fall and don't rise properly. And I don't know what it is. I must have offended a wee sprite somewhere along the way and gotten myself a curse. But as a consequence, I was banned until the baking was done. So I did sneak in and steal a gingerbread this morning, though, before I came down here for stream. It was good. Anyway, so we are going to do something I didn't get in trouble. I ran away too quickly. If you escape, that means you're not in trouble, right? Welcome, Bella. Glad to see you here too. Anyway, so this is Weird Fiction Friday. Hey, J-Math. And although I do love weird fiction as a genre, hey, Random. And there are some really good stories. I must admit that the authors we've read, William Hope Hodgson and H.P. Lovecraft, are problematic in some ways. William Hope Hodgson was not kind to women. Let's leave it at that. At least his female characters, those that even made it onto the pages. And H.P. Lovecraft was an inveterate racist. And so I was finding myself having to kind of edit myself or edit the story in real time as I read them, which was tiresome. So I went looking around, and let's be honest, H.P. Lovecraft rather dominates the weird fiction genre. But I did some research, and my best friend, who actually teaches literature, pitched in and helped me, and we found a bunch of authors who have been kind of buried by the ages, but were contemporaries of Ambrose Bierce and H.P. Lovecraft and them, and wrote weird fiction stories, but have kind of been buried by time. And, well, as Lovecraft would say, that which eternal lies, in strange eons, even death may die. So we've resurfaced a few. And today we're going to read a couple of stories from the An Itinerant House and Other Stories by Emma Frances Dawson. That seems like a good time to remember to click my transition page. And yeah, I actually found a weird fiction story by Ms. Dawson that is also a Christmas story. So I thought it would be appropriate for the season. This was one of a couple of stories that Ambrose Bierce actually requested that she write for his publication for the Christmas edition. But first, in our new tradition of reading some poetry before we start the story, and since it's still Weird Fiction Friday, I thought I'd read "'Tis the Witching Hour" by John Keats. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into that. Read me a lesson, muse, and speak it loud. Upon the top of Nevis, blind and mist, I look into the chasms, and a shroud vaporous doth hide them. Just so much I wist, mankind do know of hell. I look o'erhead, and there is a sullen mist, even so much mankind can tell of heaven. Mist is spread before earth, beneath me, even so vague is man's sight of himself. Here are the craggy stones beneath my feet. That much I know, that a poor witless elf, I tread on them, that all my eye doth meet, is mist and crag, not only on this night, but in the world of thought and mental might. 'Tis the witching hour of night, orbed is the moon and bright, and the stars they glisten, glisten, seeming with bright eyes to listen. For what listen they? For a song and for a charm, see they glisten in alarm. And the moon is waxing warm, to hear what I shall say. Moon, keep wide thy golden ears, hearken stars and hearken spheres. Hearken thou eternal sky, I sing an infant's lullaby, a pretty lullaby. Listen, 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 listen. Glisten, 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 and hear my lullaby. Though the rushes that will make its cradle still are in the lake, though the linen that will be is swathed in on the cotton tree, though the woolen that will keep it warm is on the silly sheep. Hey, Monday, thank you for the follow very much. Glad you found your way to the stream. Child, I see thee. Child, I found thee. Midst of the quiet all around thee. Child, I see thee. Child, I spy thee. And thy mother sweet is nigh thee. Child, I know thee. Child, no more, but a poet evermore. See the lyre, in a flame of fire, upon the little cradle's top, flaring, flaring, flaring past the eyesight's bearing. Awake it from its sleep, and see if it can keep its eyes upon the blaze. Amaze, amaze. It stares, it stares, it stares. It dares what no one dares. It lifts its little hand into the flame, unharmed and on the strings, paddles a little tune and sings. With dumb endeavor sweetly, barred art thou completely. Little child of the western wild, barred art thou completely. Sweetly with dumb endeavor, a poet now or never. Little child of the western wild, a poet now or never. I don't know if any of you have read Keats or not. We read Dunbar last stream. And, well, I suppose not technically last stream. We did have the subscriber stream, which several of you attended. I thought it was pretty good. We read Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein and started The Hobbit, which is a pretty fun old book if you've only seen the movies. It's something you shouldn't miss out on. We'll do the subscriber stream weekly from now on, and I do hope that more of you will jump on the Patreon link and pick up one of the tier 1 or 2 subscriptions. Join us for the subscriber readings. Well, it is a bit different than the movies. It's also briefer than the movies, to be honest. They did a lot of padding with those movies. But the story that we're going to start with from the collection by Ms. Dawson is called A Stray Reveler. A stray reveler, the picture which was a prophecy. Who hath known the ways and the wrath, the sleepless spirit, the root and blossoms of evil will. Which is the room and which is the picture? I asked my friend Aura, when she received me after my long absence abroad, during which I heard she had fallen heir to a fortune, but found her looking pinched and wan. The picture filled nearly one side of the room, which was arranged as an exact copy of it, even having a lattice window opening lengthwise, put in to match the painted one. Carpet, Navajo rugs, chairs, tables, draperies were alike. A strip of carpet hid the lower part of the frame, so that one might fancy he saw double parlors instead of one room in a painting. The screen in the room stood at just such an angle as just such a screen stood in the painted scene. Tall Japanese vases, low bookcase, hanging shelves filled with rare, odd trifles. All were thus doubled. Yes, she said, seeing me glance to and fro. I felt impelled to copy everything painted there, and to banish all my room held before. That knotted rope under glass on the mantel? Well, no, that was neither in the picture nor here till now. The fact is, I hold the property Peniel left me only by keeping that there. Two of his friends, Dacre and Chartram, received bequests on condition of calling here unexpectedly at irregular hours to see that I let it remain always in my sight. I don't like it there. Nor I. But there is nothing puzzling about it as about the picture, finished just before he died. That is a legacy I've often pondered over. Why did he call it prophetic? I always wonder whether the window in it looks, and that inner door ajar, showing a banquet scene. Is it a Christmas revel? One of the female figures resembles you. Why, it is meant for you. Don't say so. It makes me uneasy and angry, too, for I will not believe in the mystic nonsense of his scribbling, painting, and acting tribe. Yet you always let them hang around you. Because they are amusing, often handsome, and sometimes have money. But few come now, except Chartram and Dacre, in their uncertain visits. I am no longer gay enough company. Pshaw! As if the influence of one who is dead could thus last. If not, how could there be so many true tales of curses which have followed individuals or families through generation after generation? I never used to believe any such thing. I am forced to keep the picture under the terms of Peniel's will, and I cannot help studying it. Did Peniel paint it? Yes, he put me in that festive scene because I am yet alive. He once spoke of ghosts as stray revelers after life's banquet. The vacant seat beside me was to signify his absence. Not eternal, he wrote. I shall come back when you least expect it. You make me shiver. Let us talk of other things. What a pretty inlaid table. Wildfowl flying over a marsh, isn't it? Ah, it's just like the one in the picture. Even to a manuscript lying upon it, spread open under a horseshoe paperweight. You see, said Aura, one drifts inevitably to that painting. What the manuscript there represents, I have often asked myself. The one beside you, Dacre wrote. Read it. It was, a flight of fancy. In single file wild ducks drift by, dyed red by the western glow. Belated swallows lonely fly, and strange birds trooping go. Though flown from forest pine remote, or from near orchard pear, along the water depths they float, as on heights of air. The lake with mirror surface spread, bronzed by the day's bright close, to each wayfarer overhead a shadowy double shows. Ah, that I thus reflected in my soul, what flitting thoughts will stray from hidden sources, ancestors' dole, or sunshine of my day. Fantastic shapes that circling throng, some charming, some unblessed. I snare one in this fragile song, I cannot count the rest. I made another effort to divert her mind. What is behind your lovely screen? I asked. Nothing. What is behind that one? She asked, pointing to the pictured one. That question haunts me like the indefinite meaning of some passage in Browning or Rossetti. What have you learned by your study of it? What do you discover by examining that screen near you? masses of interwoven flowers with trailing vines and lights and shadows athwart the whole. Who painted it? Charthram, and when he was doing it, he and I suddenly detected, amid those apparently random dashes of color, 11 letters. Look again. Begin at the lower left-hand corner and cross diagonally. Here are lilies of the valley. Then, oh boy. May as well get that words are hard emote ready there, Vela. Eschscholtzias, a branch of Xanthoxylum fraxinium. Yeah. Okay. Tuberoses, azaleas, lobelia, iris lilies, oleander blossoms, Neapolitan violets, ixia lilies, and stephanotis flowers. That first one was terrible. Oh. Here, I'll type it in the chat so you guys can see how hard it was. You can try it out yourselves. All right, give that one a go. See how you guys try it a couple of times. See if you can not stumble. No, not typing it. You're hilarious. Cutting and pasting. All right. Well, don't you see? 2 words not merely spelled by the first letter of the plant's names, as the old-fashioned regard rings were set with ruby, emerald, garnet, amethyst, ruby, and diamond. But by looking carefully, you can discern in the seemingly careless spray or cluster the letter in indistinct and fanciful form. Well, then you are far better at English than I am, Biscuit Boy. As she spoke, and I gazed at the screen, I was surprised to distinguish so plainly now the words, Lex talionis, so skillfully placed as to elude a careless glance. The law of revenge, I cried. Was this more of your old coquetries? No, I did not tire of Peniel as usual. He had one charm all my other lovers had lacked, a stronger will than mine. I looked at her inquiringly. When you went away, you remember I was starving, genteelly starving. I met Peniel. He was engaged to an heiress. I reasoned with myself that she did not need his money as I did. I used every art to win him from her. Oh, Aura! I did! I may own it now, since both are dead. Both? Yes. He broke the engagement on account of something I told him about her. She died soon after. Some say broken-hearted. But of course we know that is a mere phrase. I presume she got a cold or something. And your refusal of him killed him? No, I accepted him. All went well until one night we went on horseback with a party of friends on a moonlight trip to the Cliff House. While there, he overheard me own my worship for money. Not marry for it, I said. It is a woman's duty. And he met there that night some old friend who completely disapproved all I had told him about Helen Rothsay, the girl who died. Oh, how angry he was. His eyes were lurid. He never spoke to me again. Next day, he sent back to me these verses he had found that Dacre had written for me to give him as mine, though you know there is nothing nonsensical about me. She gave me to read a Villanelle. What clouds of laughing little loves arise, on buoyant wing are all about me blown. I dream within the night of his dark eyes. How blessed to be, though but in flower guise, worn on his heart until my life were flown. What clouds of laughing little loves arise. Forgotten is the sun, today's blue skies. I know nor time nor space nor any zone. I dream within the night of his dark eyes. By fancied blisses borne to paradise, like some translated saint that art has shown, what clouds of laughing little loves arise. Such lotus-eating lures until one dies, no poppy petals such nepenthe I own. I dream within the night of his dark eyes. For him my passion waxes crescent-wise. Will wind and tide of fate its sway disown? What cloud of laughing little loves arise? I dream within the night of his dark eyes. He also sent me a letter telling me of these discoveries and taking leave. I shall avenge Helen's wrongs, he wrote. I shall avenge my own wrongs, but in my own time and in my own way. You shall suffer for what you have done, if I have to come back from the next world to make you. Poor or rich, old or young, sad or gay, remember that I have not forgotten. He died soon after? Yes, in a year and a day from the time we first met, which was Christmas Eve. Company came, and I could hear no more. 2 weeks later, on Christmas Eve, Aura sent for me. I found her in the same room, looking thinner and more depressed, and studying the painting. Don't, I said. You will dream of it. I did. I had been in the picture, gathered a leaf from that graceful clump of ferns growing in the odd jar, sat in that antique chair, and looked from that open window. I could not understand my hitherto matter-of-fact friend. What did you see? I asked. The same grand sunrise that thrilled us, Peniel, Dacre, Chartram, and I, as we returned from a New Year's Eve ball. A sunrise Peniel wrote about. She showed me these lines. Sorry, I needed a sip of tea. A New Year's dawn. Through fog that veils both sky and bay, there gleam the sun and wraith red glowing. So interblended that one flame they seem, as if in dread portent showing. Where will it lead us through the year untried? Through what vast desert places? Vague tracts of time whose misty margins glide within eternal spaces. I, weary pilgrim in life's caravan, that pillared fire must follow, past pyramid and sphinx of doubt and ban, mirage of hope, how hollow. Palm-shaded wells of joy, too far apart, long leagues through changeful weather, unless that foe in ambush, my own heart, leaps, and we fall together. Maybe I should have just read the poems from this instead of having to trot out the Keats. And again, with my tradition, I have not read this, so this is all a brand new work to me as well. What else happened? I asked. Nothing. I was dimly conscious of coming from that room into this. I want to stay here. Tell me about your travels and divert me. I talked to her a long while. Then she brewed rich chocolate, which we sipped as we sat silently listening to the sounds of mirth from a party given by boarders in the opposite room, listening to the foghorn and the wind, till drowsiness stole over us insensibly as the fog crept round the house, as if forming an impalpable barrier around a region enchanted. Kind of off the cuff, yeah. And there's that impalpable again. Suddenly, Aura started out of her doze with a piercing cry and sat trembling from head to foot. I've been there again, she said. You have not left your chair, I murmured, half awake. You dropped asleep. Perhaps you think so, but I have been in the picture. She shuddered as she turned her head to look at it. There were 2 vacant places at the table. I no longer sat there, but wandered about the outer room, while the guests at supper were watching and whispering and pointing, and a murmur of Lex Talionis ran from mouth to mouth. I felt that some horror waited for me and drew me to that screen, but I tried not to go. I went to the window, but the view was changed to the blackness of midnight. I looked in the mirror, yet saw nothing reflected but the room behind me. I was not to be seen. I noticed the perfume of the flowers in the bouquet on the table. I saw this room, with our figures sitting before the fire, with our chocolate tray between us, as a picture on the wall of that room. I took the manuscript from the table and found it to be verses, as we thought. I can repeat them. Ballad of the Sea of Sleep. When from far headland of the night I slip, what potent force within the rising tide bears me resistless as the billows dip, to meet the shifting wonders, eager-eyed, or float half-conscious what stars watch me glide, to fear when nightmare's monster monsters' weight o'erpowers, or laugh with nymphs and mermen in their bowers. Through blinding tempest toss on breakers steep, or fall for countless fathoms past what lowers below the dream waves of the sea of sleep. I trace, with sails all set, the unbuilt ship, and sunken treasure ere the waves subside, find here the wrecked craft making phantom trip. Define the misty bounds upon this side, the mighty mountains of the dark abide. On that the realms of light expand like flowers. There, 'tis the rocky coast of death that towers. Here on the shoals life must its lighthouse keep. Who is it that vague terror thus empowers, below the dream waves of the sea of sleep? On shore all day I find slight fellowship, but in those surges fain would plunge and hide. Those depths hold joys that none above outstrip. Perchance I cannot choose what shall betide. Friend flown afar I clasp, dread foe deride. Forget that sour all my heart devours. Avenge the wrongs that fate upon me showers. Not my control can lift the tide at neap, nor quell its rise, who thus my will deflowers, below the dream waves of the sea of sleep. Envoy, archangels, princes, thrones, dominions, powers, which of ye dwarf the centuries to hours, or swell the moments into eons sweep? Is it the prince of darkness there, who cowers beneath the dream waves of the sea of sleep? I was full of indecision and fear about looking behind the screen, but at last I did look. Her voice failed. I gave her some wine. What do you think you saw? Think! I saw it. All right, Biscuits. I hope you catch the rest on the recording. I'm glad you made it in for a little bit. Have a very good evening or morning or afternoon, whichever it happens to be for you. I saw it. What? Don't ask me, she cried, shuddering. I cannot describe it. Can you imagine the aspect of a corpse, long dead, moldering, luminous, all blue light and threads and tatters of its burial robes? Oh, God, save us! Her glance rested on the mantle. I will not keep that rope. I will not. I will not. Curses on him and his memory. She snatched down the glass case, broke it, and flung the rope in the grate. We watched it as the fire consumed it, and for a few moments held its charred outlines as if it had fallen in a distinct semblance of a closed hand with index finger pointing toward the screen. Our eyes met above it. Do poets and artists possess an extra sense? She muttered, grasping my arm in awe. But the property! I stammered in sudden alarm. What will you do without that? No one need know at present of this conflagration. I will lock up and go abroad. I will start tomorrow. Just then, we heard the voices of Dacre and Chartram in the hall. We stared at each other in dismay. They must not come in here, she cried, and hurrying toward the next room, disappeared behind the screen. The next instant, a blood-curdling shriek ran through the room, rooting me to the spot where I stood. Before I knew anything more, Dacre and Chartram were standing by me, asking what was the matter. I could not speak. Weighed down by a sense of dread, I could only point to the screen. As they turned it aside, throwing another part of the room into shadow, the picture vanished in the gloom. But the room took on a more picturesque aspect. The door ajar showed, across the narrow hall, the open door where the merrymakers paused, leaning forward with startled faces and anxious gestures. Aura was lying full length on the carpet, dead. Her face was full of terror. Was it only a shadow, that livid line around her neck, as if she had been strangled? As we turned away in horror, Dacre uttered a cry of surprise, and touching Chartram, pointed to the vacant space on the mantel. The rope! They cried with one voice, like the chorus to a tragic opera. She had just burned it, I stammered. They looked at each other. Did she furnish Peniel with the means to destroy her? Dacre asked Chartram. Tell me, I begged, what is the mystery of that rope? There was a moment's delay. Then Chartram gave the startling reply. It was the one with which Peniel hung himself. What do you guys think? Hey, Gecko. Glad you could make it. Hope you're doing well. Dark, certainly, but I thought it was pretty good. All right. Well, it's a ghost rope now. All right, let's pick another one. Let's see. Here's the table of contents. All right, so we've got an itinerant house, singed moths, the dramatic in my destiny, a gracious visitation, a sworn statement. The second card wins, in silver upon purple. Are the dead dead? And apparently that's all the ones in this book. What do you think? Looks like most of them are about the same length, maybe a little bit longer. Obviously purple. Oh, and silver upon purple? All right, that sound good to the rest of you guys? Vela may have a weakness for purple. Just a tiny little one. All right, let's see. In silver upon purple. This is page 275 in the original numbering. All right, looks like this is actually going to be a really short one. It's also page 310 instead of 275 in the ebook version. In silver upon purple, star-crossed lovers. For no human equation can you eliminate that unknown factor, the most mysterious of all, the unexpected. I'm glad, Jema. That's really what I'm hoping to do with this, is just give everybody a bit of relaxation and peace. Midsummer and midnight in an Italian city in the 16th century. The narrow, crooked streets are dim and quiet. The purple dark above is strewn with worlds like silver sands, yet so solemn and mysterious, one feels they may form Kabbalistic characters, and dreads some consequences yet hanging in the stars. A nobleman passes along the lonely streets toward the cemetery, followed by his page, who bears a torch and a basket of flowers. The torchlight casts glints upon the heavy gold embroidery of a sinister heraldic flower, which wreathes the young gentleman's white cloak, and lets the white satin puffing in his slashed sleeves gleam, the gems set in the hilt of his rapier flash. The frosty plumes in his hat nod above a refined, proud face. Many women have sighed, have wept, because he passed them without a glance. The stately elegance of the man himself is far more than his adornments. What could thwart the will of such a fine, majestic being? Those shifting silver sands, that dust of worlds, athwart the purple dark, long blown and blowing far. These milky blossoms, he muses, are not white enough to match the purity of that fair girl who was to have been my wife. I ought to thank heaven that I lose her only as the bride of death. I could never have yielded her to any other bridegroom. My beautiful, my own. He will never know that she loved, even married, another. He moves haughtily toward that unforeseen but immediate, sudden fray in which he is to be killed. Athwart the purple dark, long blown and blowing far, those shifting silver sands, that dust of worlds. The page tries to stride like his master, and longs to be the grown man who can do as he likes. The shadows leap from them, point at them, draw grotesque likenesses of them, crowd back and follow. Here is a lofty window, over which a fantastic gargoyle, half demon, half dragon, is lolling out its tongue, as if in derision. But a shadow closes its mouth, even cowls its head, and leaves its sharp claws, holding an open book, its coiled tail by which it hangs from the roof, without meaning. Below, in the open window, a girl of scarlet lips and bright eyes is leaning out into the summer night. Many men with their hungry hearts in their eyes have followed her to and from mass. What shall assail with stifling torment a creature of such grace and charm? Long blown and blowing far, that dust of worlds athwart the purple dark, those shifting silver sands. She sees the picture as passing of knight and page. She knows their mission. She does not regret the death. Her own lover was too much taken by that girl at the late masque. I have been wrong not to let him know how his wooing has thrilled me, she thinks. When he serenaded me the night before, I neither lighted my window nor flung down a flower. I will make amends now for my long neglect of him. I will embroider that old love song he sang for the border of the cloak he shall wear at our wedding. It shall be of sky blue velvet, the border of satin, the 5 lines and stems of the notes, the bars in silver, the notes of seed pearls. With ropes of pearls and white plumes on his hat, how handsome he will look. His beauty is a melody, a harmony for the eye beyond any the ear ever heard, and its theme is love. The purple dark, that shifting dust of worlds, those silver sands long blown and blowing far athwart. The serene night is too pitiful to let her feel any foreboding of ill, of news that dawn will bring of a triple tragedy tonight in the cemetery, any hint of the secret which will be such distress to her now to know, that her lover has already married the girl whose beauty bewitched him at the masque. An old nurse who has come from a palace in mourning, and whose black figure, thrown up by the circling rays of torchlight, is a blot on the paler darkness behind her, sees by the dancing flare the beatified girl in the window and the passing beneath of the jaunty, disdainful cavalier and his strutting envious page. The lovely girl, with pink roses and dark curls shadowing her high forehead, wears deep rose velvet, heavily embroidered with crystal beads, the bodice a glittering mass of them, like a vision, all for an instant of tears she is soon to shed. The old woman has a vivid glimpse of her against a background of gold-colored tapestry. The gargoyle grins, its mouth gapes into mock laughter, then appears to hastily shut as grim shadows close around the dreaming girl and pursue the departing cavalier. Now, afore heaven, why couldn't they fall in love with one another, the nurse mumbles, just and young and handsome as the others, and with the chinks. Yet these must go down through the ages, as they say, forever famous as the jilted ones. Nobody will be concerned about what they may have suffered. A dainty beauty, a brave gallant, they deserve a better fate. Poor County Paris, poor Rosaline. That dust of worlds, whose shifting silver sands long blown, and blowing far athwart the purple dark. That's Romeo and Juliet, isn't it? That they're talking about? So this would be Paris and Rosaline. Rosaline, the one that Romeo was wooing up until the party where he fell for Juliet. And Juliet was supposed to marry Paris. But they married each other in secret and then suicided in the cemetery. Though everyone thought that Juliet was dead, which is, don't marry your cousin. That's weird. Also, your kids may end up with weird noses and hunchbacks. Big no-no. But yeah, that's totally like a pastiche of Romeo and Juliet. That's cool. Let's see. Let's pick one more short one. In fact, let's just do an itinerant house. It's the, well, I mean, if you marry your cousin, clearly you're going to have children with him. I mean, the one goes with the other, right? At least in those days. So we'll do an itinerant house, and then we'll take a short intermission. An itinerant house, eternal longing with eternal pain, want without hope, and memory saddening all congregated failure and despair, shall wander there through some old maze of wrong. His wife? Cried Philippa. Yes, I answered, unwillingly, for until the steamer brought Mrs. Anson, I believed in this Mexican woman's right to that name. I felt sorry for the bright eyes and kind heart that had cheered Anson's lodgers through weary months of early days in San Francisco. She burst into tears. None of us knew how to comfort her. Daring spoke first. Beauty always wins friends. Between her sobs, she repeated one of the pithy sayings of her language. It is as easy to find a lover as to keep a friend, but as hard to find a friend as to keep a lover. Yes, said Voles, a new friendship is like a new string to your guitar. You are not sure what its tone may prove, nor how soon it may break. But at least its falsity is learned at once, she sobbed. Is it possible, I asked, that you had no suspicion? None. He told me, she ended in a fresh gust of tears. The old story, muttered Daring. Mariette's skipper was right in thinking everything that once happened would come again somewhere. Anson came. He had left the newcomer at the Niantic on pretense of putting his house in order. Philippa turned on him before we could go. Is this true? She cried. Without reply, he went to the window and stood looking out. She sprang toward him, with rage distorting her face. Coward! She screamed in fierce scorn. Then she fell senseless. 2 doctors were called. One said she was dead. The other, at first doubtful, vainly tried hot sealing wax and other tests. After 36 hours, her funeral was planned. Yet Daring, once medical student, had seen an electric current used in such a case in Vienna and wanted to try it. That night, he, Voles, and I offered to watch. When all was still, Daring, who had smuggled in the simple things needed, began his weird work. Is it not too late? I asked. Every corpse, said he, can be thus excited soon after death, for a brief time only, and but once. If the body is not lifeless, the electric current has power at any time. Voles, too nervous to stay near, stood in the door open to the dark hall. It was a dreadful sight. The dead woman's breast rose and fell. Smiles and frowns flitted across her face. The body begins to react finely, cried Daring, making Voles open the windows, while I wrapped hot blankets round Philippa, and he instilled clear coffee and brandy. It seems like sacrilege. Leave her alone, I exclaimed. Better dead than alive. My God, say not that, cried Voles. The nerve which hears is last to die. She may know all we say. Musical bosh, I muttered. Perhaps not, said Daring. In magnetic sleep that nerve can be roused. The night seemed endless. The room gained an uncanny look. The macaws on the gaudy, old-fashioned wallpaper seemed fluttering and changing places. Voles crouched in a heap near the door. Daring stood by Philippa, watching closely. I paced the shadowy room, looked at the gleam of the moon on the bay, listened to the soughing wind in the gum trees mocking the sea, and tried to recall more cheerful scenes, but always bent under the weight of that fearful test going on beside me. Where was her soul? Beyond the stars? In the room with us? Or, like trodden snowdrift melting in the dark? Voles came behind, startling me by grasping my elbow. Shall I not play? He whispered. Familiar music is remembrance changed to sound. It brings the past as perfume does. Gypsy music in her ear would be like holding wild flowers to her nostrils. Ask Daring, I said. He will know best. I heard him urging Daring. She has gypsy blood, he said. Their music will rouse her. Daring unwillingly agreed. But nothing abrupt. Begin low. Vaguely uneasy, I turned to object, but Voles had gone for his violin. Far off arose a soft, wavering, sleepy strain, like a wind blowing over a field of poppies. He passed in slow, dramatic style through the hall, playing on the way. As he came in, oddly sustained notes trembled like sighs and sobs. These were by degrees subdued, though with spasmodic outbursts, amid a grand movement as of phantom shapes through cloudland. One heart-rending phrase recurring as one of the shadowy hosts striving to break loose, but beaten back by impalpable throngs, numberless grace notes trailing their sparks like fireworks. No music of our intervals and our rhythms, but perplexing in its charm, like a draught that maddens. Time, space, our very identities were consumed in this white heat of sound. I held my breath. I caught his arm. "It is too bold and distracting," I cried. "It is enough to kill us. Do you expect to torment her back? How can it affect us so?" "Because," he answered, laying down his violin and wiping his brow. "In the gypsy minor scale, the fourth and seventh are augmented. The sixth is diminished. The frequent augmentation of the fourth makes that sense of unrest." "Bah! Technical terms make it no plainer," I said, returning to the window. He played a whispered merry discordance, resolving into click of castanets, laugh, and dance of a Okay. Words. Sorry. Apparently things are just going to be difficult this evening. The frequent augmentation of the fourth makes that sense of unrest. Bah! Technical terms make it no plainer, I said, returning to the window. He played a whispered, merry discordance, resolving into click of castanets, laugh and dance of a gypsy camp. Out of the world of flying steps and tremolo of tambourines rose a tender voice, asking, denying, sighing, imploring, passing into an overruling, long-drawn call that vibrated in widening rings to reach the farthest horizon. Nay, beyond land or sea, east of the sun, west of the moon. With a rush returned the wild jollity of men's bass laughter, women's shrill reply, the stir of the gypsy camp. This dropped behind vague, rolling measures of clouds and chaos, where to and fro floated grotesque goblins of grace notes, like the fancies of a madman, struggling, rising, falling, vain reaching strains, fierce cries like commands. The music seemed another vital essence, thrilling us with its own emotion. No more, I cried, half gasping, and grasping Volz's arm. What is it, Daring? He had staggered from the bed, and was trying to see his watch. It is just 44 hours, he said, pointing to Philippa. Her eyes were open. We were alarmed, as if doing wrong, and silently watched her. 15 minutes later, her lips formed one word. Idiots! Half an hour after she flung the violin from bed to floor, but would not speak. People began to stir about the house. The prosaic sounds jarred on our strained nerves. We felt brought from another sphere. Volz and I were going, but Philippa's upraised hand kept us. She sat up, looking a ghastly vision. Turning first toward me, she quoted my words. Better dead than alive? True. You knew I would be glad to die. What right had you to bring me back? God's curses on you. I was dead. Then came agony. I heard your voices. I thought we were all in hell. Then I found how by your evil cunning I was to be forced to live. It was like an awful nightmare. I shall not forget you, nor you me. These very walls shall remember. Here, where I have been so tortured, no one shall have peace. Fools! Leave me, never come in this room again. We went, all talking at once, Daring angry at her mood. Volz sorry he had not reached a soothing pianissimo passage. I, owning we had no right to make the test. We saw her but once more, when, with a threatening nod toward us, she left the house. From that time, a gloom settled over the place. Mrs. Anson proved a hard-faced, cold-hearted, Cape Cod woman, a scold and drudge, who hated us as much as we disliked her. Homesick and unhappy, she soon went east and died. Within a year, Anson was found dead where he had gone hunting in the Sausalito woods, supposed a suicide. Daring was hung by the vigilantes, and the rest were scattered on the four winds. Volz and I were last to go. The night before we sailed, he for Australia, I for New York. He said, I am sorry for those who come after us in this house. Not knowing of any tragedy here, I said, they will not feel its influence. They must feel it, he insisted. It is written in the Proverbs, evil shall not depart from his house. Some years later, I was among passengers embarking at New York for California, when there was a cry of man overboard. In the confusion of his rescue, among heartless and pitiful talk, I overheard one man declare that the drowned might yet be revived. Oh yes, cried a well-known voice behind me, but they might not, thank you. I turned to find Voles. He was coming out with Wynne, the actor. Enjoying our comradeship on the voyage, on reaching San Francisco, we took rooms together on Bush Street in an old house with a large garden. Voles became leader of the orchestra, and Wynne leading man at the same theater. Lest my folks, a Maine deacon's family, should think I was on the road to ruin, I told in letters home only of the city's missionary in the house. Voles was hard-worked. Wynne was not much liked. My business went wrong. It rained for many weeks. To this we laid the discomfort that grew to weigh on us. Voles wreaked his sense of it on his violin, adding to the torment of Wynne and myself. For to lonesome, anxious souls, the demon in music shows horns and cloven foot in the trying sounds of practice. One Sunday, Voles played The Witch's Dance, The Dream, and The Long, Long Weary Day. I can bear it no longer, said Wynne. I feel like the haunted Matthias in The Bells. If I could feel so when acting such parts, it would make my fortune. But I feel it only here. I think, said Voles, it is the Gloria Fonda bush near the window. The scent is too strong. He dashed off Strauss's fretful, conflicting hurry and delay. There, it is too much, said I. You express my feelings. He looked doubtful. Put it in words, he said. How can I said. When our firm sent me abroad, I went sightseeing among old palaces, whose goblin tapestries framed in their walls were faded to gray phantoms of pictures. But out of some the thrilling eyes followed me, till I could not stay in their range. My feeling here is the uneasy one of being watched. Ha, said Voles, you remind me of the Heine when he wrote from Livorno. He knew no Italian, but the old palaces whispered secrets unheard by day. The moon was interpreter, knew the lapidary style translated to the dialect of his heart. Strange effects of after the moon, mused Wynne. That gives new meaning to Kent's threat. I'll make a sop of the moonshine of you. Voles went on. Heine wrote, the stones here speak to me, and I know their mute language. Also they seem deeply to feel what I think. So a broken column of the old Roman times, an old tower of Lombardy, a weather-beaten Gothic piece of pillar understands me well. But I am a ruin myself, wandering among ruins. Perhaps like Poe's hero, said I have imbibed shadows of fallen columns at Baalbek and Tadmor and Persepolis, until my very soul has become a ruin. But I too, said Wynne, feel the unrest of Tannhauser. Alas, what I seek here or anywhere, whose way of life is like the crumbled stair that winds and winds about a ruined tower, and leads no whither. I'm oppressed, Voles owned, as if someone in my presence was suffering deeply. I feel, said Wynne, as if the scene was not set right for the performance now going on. There is a hitch and drag somewhere, scene shifters on a strike. Happy are you poets and musicians who can express what is vague. Voles laughed. As in Liszt's oratorio of Christus, said he, where a sharp, ear-piercing sostenuto on the piccolo flute shows the shining star of Bethlehem. He turned to me. Schubert's Wanderer always recalls to me a house you and I know to be under a ban. Haunted, asked Wynne. Of all speculative theories, St. Martin sends the most cold thrills up one's back. He said none of the dead come back, but some stay. What we Germans call Gebani, tied to one spot, said Voles. But this is no ghost, only a proof of what a German psychologist holds, that the magnetic man is a spirit. Go on and tell quaint lies, and I like them, said Wynne. I told them in brief outline, with no names, the tale Voles and I knew, while we strolled to Telegraph Hill, passing 5 street blocks blocked by the roving houses common to San Francisco. Wynne said, "They seem to have minds of their own, with their entrances and exits in a moving drama." "Sort of Poor Joe's," said I. "Castles and chess," said Voles. "Io-like," said Wynne, "with a gad in their hearts that forever drives them on." I'm not sure what the moving houses are. If anybody wants to Google like San Francisco and moving houses, might be a historical context that I'm missing. A few foreign sailors lounged up on the hilltop, looking at the view. The wind blew such a gale we did not stay. The steps we had known, cut in the side, were gone. Where the old house used to be, goats were browsing. "Perchance we do inhabit it but now," mockingly cried Wynne. "Methinks it must be so." "Then," said Voles, thoughtfully, "it might be what Germans call far working, acted in distance that affects us." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Do you know anything of her now?" "I know she went to Mexico," said he. "That is all." "What is far working?" asked Wynne. "If I could act in the distance, and here too, what larks!" "Yes, if," said I. "Think how all our lives turn on that pivot. Suppose Hawthorne's offer to join Wilkes' exploring expedition had been taken." "Only to wills that know no if is far working possible," said Voles. "Substance or space can no more hinder this force than one of mineral magnetism. Passivant joins it with pictures falling or watches stopping at the time of death. In sleepwalking, some kinds of illness or nearness of death, the nervous ether is not so closely allied to its material conductors. The nerves may be loosened to act from afar, the surest where blood or feeling makes attraction or repulsion." Okay. So they like pick up a house and move it with a horse team? All right. That's different. Do you suppose they're going to say that's what happened to the house they were thinking of? Maybe they're actually residing in the same one, and that's why it's the itinerant house. Wynne, in the 2 voices of the play, repeated, "Victor, where is the gentleman?" "Chispe, as the old song says, his body is in Segovia, his soul is in Madrid." We could learn about the house we were in only that 5 families had moved in and out during the last year. Wynne resolved to shake off the gloom that wrapped us. In struggles to defy it, he, on the strength of $1,000 benefit, made 1 payment on the house and began repairs. On an off night, he was vainly trying to study a new part. Voles advised the relief of his nerves by reciting the dream scene from The Bells, reminding him that he had compared it with his restlessness there. Wynne denied it. "Yes," said Voles, "where the mesmerizer forces Matthias to confess." But Wynne refused, as if vexed, till Voles offered to show in music his own mood, and I agreed to read some rhymes about mine. Voles was long tuning his violin. "I feel," he said, "as if the passers-by would hear a secret. Music is such a subtle expression of emotion. Like flower odor rolls far and affects the stranger. Hearken, in Hai's Rise Builder, as the cross was thrown ringing on the banquet table of the gods, they grew dumb and pale, and even paler till they melted in mist. So shall you at the long-drawn wail of my violin grow breathless and fade from each other's sight." No, not a dumb joke at all. I was actually just discussing Howl's Moving Castle a couple hours ago, and comparing the movie version to the book. Or I suppose it was likely a manga. I've only seen the movie. The music closed around us, and we waited in its deep solitude. 1 brief, sad phrase fell from airy heights to lowest depths into a sea of sound, whose harmonious eddies, as they widened, breathed of passion and pain, now swooning, now reviving, with odd pauses and sighs that rose to cries of despair. but the tormenting first strain, recurring fainter and fainter, as if drowning, drowned, yet floating back for repeated last plaint, as if not to be quelled, and closing, as it began, the whole. As I read the name of my verses, Voles murmured, Les Nuits Blanches, number 4, Stephen Heller. And the poem he chose was Sleepless Nights. Against the garden's mossy pollen, I lean and wish the night away, whose faint unequal shadows trailing seems but a dream of those of day. Sleep burdens blossom, bud and leaf. My soul alone aspires, dilates, yearns to forget its care and grief. No bath of sleep its pain abates. How dread these dreams of wide-eyed nights! What is and is not, both I rue. My wild thoughts fly like wandering kites. No peace falls with this balmy dew. Through slumberous stillness, scarcely stirred by sudden trembles as wind shifts, o'er placid pools some skimming bird its Lethean bowl a poppy lifts. If one deep draught my doubts could solve, the world might bubble down its brim, like Cleopatra's pearl dissolve, with all my dreams within its rim. What should I know but calm repose? How feel, recalling this lost sphere? Alas, the fabled poppy shows upon its bleeding heart a tear. When, unwilling, began to recite, I feared nothing, but dreams are dreams. He stammered, could not go on, and fell to the floor. We got him to bed. He never spoke sanely after. His wild fancies appalled us, watching him all night. Avaunt, Sathanas! That's not my cue, he muttered. A full house tonight. How could Talma forget how the crowd looked, and fancy it a pack of skeletons? Tell Voles to keep the violins playing through this scene. It works me up as well as thrills the audience. Oh, what tiresome nights I have lately, always dreaming of scenes where rival women move, as in court and stage, where all masked the king makes love to Francis Stuart before the queen's face. How do I try to cure it? And being thus frighted, swear a prayer or two and sleep again. Madam, you're late. You've too little rouge. You'll look ghastly. We're not called yet. Let's rehearse our scene. Now then, I enter left, pass to the window. You cry, is this true, and faint. All crowd about. Quick, curtain. Yeah, he's kind of rambling in stage speak. Voles and I looked at each other. Can our magnetism make his senses so sharp that he knows what is in our minds, he asked me. Nonsense, I said. Memory, laudanum, and whiskey. There, went on. The orchestra is stopping. They've rung up the curtain. Don't hold me. The stage waits. Yet how can I go outside my door to step on dead bodies? Street and sidewalk are knee-deep with them. They rise and curse me for disturbing them. I lift my cane to strike. It turns to a snake, whose slimy body writhes in my hand. Trying to hold it from biting me, my nails cut my palm till blood streams down the snake. He awed us not alone from having no control of his thoughts, but because there came now and then a strange influx of emotion, as if other souls passed in and out of his body. Is this hell? He groaned. What blank darkness! Where am I? What is that infernal music haunting me through all space? If I could only escape it, I need not go back to earth, to that room where I feel choked, where the very wallpaper frets me with its flaunting birds flying to and fro, mocking my fettered state. Here in the very den of the wolf. Hullo, Benvolio, call boys hunting you. Romeo's gone on. See where he steals, locked in some gloomy covert under key, of cautionary silence, with his arms threaded like these crossbows in sorrow's knot. What is this dread that weighs like a nightmare? I do not fear like Macbeth, I only inhabit trembling. For one of them, she is in hell already, and burns, poor soul. For the other, I must die here, alone in the woods, felled by a coward, stealth-like from behind a tree. None of the boys will know. I just now come from a whole world of mad women that it almost... What? Is she dead? Poor Philippa. Did you tell him her name? I asked Voles. No, said he. Can one man's madness be another's real life? Blood was spilt. The Avenger's wing hovered above my house, raved Wynne. What are these lights? Hundreds of them. Serpent's eyes? Is it the audience? Coiled, many-headed monster, following me round the world? What do they hiss? I've played this part 100 times, taught by rage and hunger and despair. Do they, full-fed, well-clothed, light-hearted, know how to judge me? A plague on both your houses. What is that flame? Fire that consumes my vitals. Spontaneous combustion. It is then possible. Water! Water! The doctor said that there had been some great strain on Wynne's mind. He sank fast, though we did all we could. Toward morning I turned to Voles with the words, "He is dead." The city missionary was passing the open door. He grimly muttered, "Better dead than alive." "My God, say not that," cried Voles. "The nerve which here is last to die. He may know." He faltered. We stood aghast. The room grew suddenly familiar. I tore off a strip of the gray tint on the walls. Under it, we found the old paper with his bright macaws. "Aha," Voles says. "Will you now deny my theory of far working?" Dazed, I could barely murmur. "Then people can be affected by it." "Certainly," said he, "as rubbed glasses gain electric power." Within a week we sailed, he for Brazil and I for New York. Several years after, at Sacramento, Arn, an artist I had known, found me on the overland train, and on reaching San Francisco, urged me to go where he lodged. "I am low-spirited here," he said. "I don't know why." I stopped short on the crowded wharf. "Where do you live?" I asked. "Far up on Market Street," said he. "What sort of house?" I insisted. "Oh, nothing modern. Over a store," he answered. Reassured, I went with him. He lived in a jumble of easels, portfolios, paint, canvas, bits of statuary, casts and carvings, foils, red curtains, Chinese goatskins, woodcuts, photographs, sketches, and unfinished pictures. On the wall hung a scene from The Wandering Jew, as we saw it at the Adelphi in London, where in the Arctic regions he sees visions foreshadowing the future of his race. Under it was quoted, "All in my mind is confused, nor can I dissever the mold of the visible world from the shape of my thought in me. The inward and outward are fused, and through them murmur forever the sorrow whose sound is the wind and the roar of the limitless sea." "Do you remember," Arn asked, "when we saw that play, both younger and more hopeful? How has the world used you? As for me, I have done nothing since I came here, but that sketch finished months ago. I have not lost ambition, but I feel fettered." "Absinthe? Opium? Tobacco?" I hinted. "Neither," he answered. "I try to work, but visions, widely different from what I will, crowd on me, as on the Jew in the play. Not the unconscious brain action all thinkers know, but a dictation from without. No rush of creative impulses, but a dragging sense of something else I ought to paint." "Briefly," I said, "you are a haunted man." "Haunted by a willful design," said he. "I feel as if something had happened somewhere which I must show." "What is it like?" I asked. "I wish I could tell you," he replied, "but only odd bits change places, like looking in a kaleidoscope, yet all cluster around one center." One day, looking over his portfolios, I found an old Temple bar, which he said he kept for this passage, which he read to me from T.A. Trollope's Argus Tragedy. "The old walls and ceilings and floor must be saturated with the exhalations of human emotions. These lintels, doorways, and stairs have become, by long use and homeliness, dear to human hearts, and have become so intimately blended a portion of the mental furniture of human lives that they have contributed their part to the formation of human characters. Such facts and considerations have gone to the fashioning of the mental habitudes of all of us. If all this could have been recorded, if emotion had the property of photographing itself on the surfaces of the walls which had witnessed it, even if only passion, when translated into acts, could have done so, ah, what palimpsests, what deciphering of tangled records, What skillful separation of successive layers of passionography. I know a room, said Arn, thronged with acts that elbow me from my work and fill me with unrest. I looked at him in mute surprise. I suppose, he went on, such things do not interest you. No, yes, I stammered. I have marked in traveling how lonely houses change their expression as you come near. Pass and leave them. Some frown, others smile. The Bible buildings had life of their own and human diseases. The priests cursed or blessed them as men. Houses seem to remember, said he. Some rooms oppress us with a sense of lives that have been lived in them. That, I said, is like Draper's theory of shadows on walls always staying. He shows, after a breath passes over a coin or key, its spectral outline remains for months after the substance is removed. But can the mist of circumstance sweeping over us make our vacant places hold any trace of us? Why not? Who can deny it? Why do you look at me so? He asked. I could not tell him the sad tale. I hesitated, then said, I was thinking of Voles, a friend I had who not only believed in what Bulwer calls a power akin to mesmerism and superior to it, once called magic, and that it might reach over the dead so far as their experience on earth, but also in animal magnetism from any distance. Arn grew queerly excited. If time and space exist but in our thoughts, why should it not be true, said he. MacDonald's lover cries, that which has been is, and the past can never cease. She is mine, and I shall find her. What matters it when, or where, or how? He sighed. In Acapulco, a year ago, I saw a woman who has been before me ever since, the center of the circling, changing, crude fancies that trouble me. Did you know her? I asked. No, nor anything about her, not even her name. It is like a spell. I must paint her before anything else, but I cannot yet decide how. I feel sure she played a tragic part in some life drama. Swinburne's Queen of Panthers, I hinted. Yes, but I was not in love. Love I must forgo. I am not a man with an income. I know you are not a nincompoop, I said, always trying to change such themes by a jest. I could not tell him how I knew of a place which had the influence he talked of. I could not revisit that house. Soon after, he told me he had begun his picture, but would not show it. He complained that one figure kept its back toward him. He worked on it till he fell ill. Even then, he hid it. Only a layer of passionography, he said. I grew restless. I thought his mood affected mine. It was a torment as well as a puzzle to me that his whole talk should be of the influence of houses, rooms, even personal property that had known other owners. Once I asked him if he had anything like the brown coat Sheridan swore drew ill luck to him. Sometimes I think, he answered, it is the special brown paint artist prize which affects me. It is made from the best asphaltum, and that can be got only from Egyptian mummy cloths. Very likely dust of the mummies is ground in it. I ought to feel their ill will. One day I went to Sausalito. In the still woods I forgot my unrest, till coming to the stream where, as I suddenly remembered, Anson was found dead. A dread took me, which I tried to lose by putting into rhyme. Turning my pockets at night, I crumpled the page I had written on and threw it on the floor. In uneasy sleep, I dreamed I was again in Paris, not where I liked to recall being, but at Boulier's and in wartime. The bald, spectacled leader of the orchestra, leaning back, shamming sleep, while a dancing, tramping, screaming crowd waved tricolored flags and called for the Chant du Départ. 3,000 voices in a rushing roar that makes the 20,000 lights waver, in spasmodic but steady chorus. Les départs, parts, parts, les départs, parts, parts, les départs, parts, parts. Roused, I suppose, by passing rioters, I did not try to sleep again, but rose to write a letter from the early mail. As I struck a light, I saw, smoothed out on the table, the wrinkled page I had cast aside. The ink was yet wet on 2 lines added to each verse. A chill crept over me as I read. Forest murmurs. Across the woodland bridge I pass, and sway its 3 long narrow planks, to mark how gliding waters glass bright blossoms doubled ranks on ranks, and how, through tangle of the ferns, floats incense from veiled flower urns. What would the babbling brook reveal? What may these trembling depths conceal? In the first 2 added lines, dread secret of the dense woods held, with restless shudders horror spelled. How shift the shadows of the wood, as if it tossed in troubled sleep, strange whispers vaguely understood, above, below, around me creep, while in the somber shadowed stream, great scarlet splashes far down gleam, the odd reflected stately shapes of cardinals in crimson capes. In the next 2 added lines, not those, but spectral pools of blood that stain these sands through strongest flood. Like blare of trumpets through black nights, or sunset clouds before a storm, are these red phantom water sprites that mock me with fantastic form, with flitting of the last year's bird, fled ripples that its low flight stirred. How should these rushing waters learn aught but the bend of this year's fern? And the last 2 added lines, the loathsome wood with bated breath, hints of a hidden blow and death. I could not stay alone. I ran to Arn's room. As I knocked, the falling of some light thing within me made me think he was stirring. I went in. He sat in the moonlight, back to me before his easel. The picture on it might be the one he kept secret. I would not look. I went to his side and touched him. He had been dead for hours. I turned the unseen canvas to the wall. Next day I packed and planned to go east. I panned the landlady not to send Arn's body to the morgue, and watched it that night, when a sudden memory swept over me like a tidal wave. There was a likeness in the room to one where I had before watched the dead. Yes, there were the windows, there the doors. Just here stood the bed, in the same spot I sat. What wildness was in the air of San Francisco! To put such crazy thoughts to flight, I would look at Arn's last work. Yet I wavered, and more than once turned away after laying my hand on it. At last I snatched it, placed it on the easel, and lighted the nearest gas burner before looking at it. Then, great heavens! How had this vision come to Arn? It was the scene where Philippa cursed us, every detail of the room reproduced, even the gay birds on the wallpaper and her flower pots. The figures and faces of Daring and Voles were true as hers, and in the figure with the averted face, which Arn had said kept its back to him, I knew myself. What strange insight had he gained by looking at Philippa? It was like the man who trembled before the unknown portrait of the Marquis de Brinvilliers. How long I gazed at the picture I do not know. I heard, without heeding, the doorbell ring and steps along the hall. Voices. Someone looking at rooms. The landlady saying this room was to let, but unwilling to show it. Forced to own its last tenant there, lay there dead. This seemed no shock to the stranger. Well, said her shrill tones, poor as he was, he's better dead than alive. The door opened as a well-known voice cried, My God, say not that! The nerve which hears is last to die. Voles stood before me. Awe-struck, we looked at each other in silence. Then he waved his hand to and fro before his eyes. Is this a dream? He said. There, pointing to the bed, you. To me, the same words, the very room. Is it our fate? I pointed to the picture and to Arn, the last work of this man, who thought it a fancy sketch. While Voles stood dumb and motionless before it, the landlady spoke. Then you know the place. Can you tell what ails it? There have been suicides in this room. No one prospers in the house. My cousin, who is a house mover, warned me against taking it. He says before the store was put under it here, it stood on Bush Street, and before that on Telegraph Hill. Voles clutched my arm. It is the Flying Dutchman of a house, he cried, and drew me fast downstairs and out into a dense fog which made the world seem a tale that was told, blotting out all but our two slanting forms, bent as by what poor Wynne would have called a blast from hell, hurrying blindly away. I heard the voice of Voles as if from afar. The magnetic man is a spirit. And that took longer than I thought, but we shall do a quick intermission, and then we'll come back and do one, possibly two more shorts. That would be awful, though. Being cursed to keep coming back to that house, which was wandering around like it was, I don't know, getting ready to sneak attack you. And having to watch person after person die. Oh, you're all right, Vela. Well, I mean, they are kind of ghost stories, and it is Weird Fiction Friday, so it kind of goes along with it. You wish you had a portable tea maker? I think they just call that like an electric kettle. Well, we're taking an intermission. This is the perfect time to go heat up some water. You could always just microwave a cup of water and bring it back with the tea bag. We'll wait for you. Just be quick. I will start a timer on you, though. Run, J-Math. Go get that tea. Now, for anyone new that's here, thank you so much for coming. I hope you're enjoying the stories. And do click that follow button. And there's also a Discord. I'd love to have you join and come chat with us in between streams. And if you have stories you'd like to hear read, there's a request channel where you can ask for stories. We read public domain works live on Twitch, and then on Thursdays we do a subscriber reading where we read more modern works that have been requested. We are also contemplating a bit of a format change that I would love to hear some feedback from everybody on. My question to all of you is, would you rather continue as we are, where we have days dedicated to certain works and we read them once a week, and there's kind of a theme to the day, like midweek mysteries on Wednesdays, where we've been reading works by Agatha Christie, or Weird Fiction Fridays, like today? Or would you rather we pick a book and power through it and read it for each stream, and do it that way, and so we're reading one work at a time instead of 4 or 5 different ones? Both are great approaches and both have clear benefits, but I am curious which is more appealing to everyone. So please join the Discord or go into it if you haven't, if you're already part of it. And in the feedback channel, you'll find a spot to answer that question. I want to hear from each and every one of you, whether you listen live or on the recording or on the YouTube channel. Doesn't matter how you come and listen. I don't want to hear what you think and what your opinion is on the matter. So please let me know. Other than that, I hope everyone's doing well. Anyone have any questions for the 8 Ball? Anything you'd like to ask? Type exclamation mark, the number 8, the word ball, all is one, and then your question needs to be in the form of a yes or no question, and the Magic 8 Ball will pop up on the screen and give you an answer to your question. It's got a few other options than the traditional one, so you may be surprised by what you see. Oh, let's see. Did I miss anything in the chat? I'm glad you're liking the story, Sparky. This is that really got to you when the 8-ball told you to go ask your mother, didn't it, Vela? It was weeks ago. Vela asked the 8-ball a question, and it said that she'd better go ask her mother. She got quite irate about it. You give J-Math just another minute, and then we'll get back into it. Let me find another story for us. What did 8-ball say? I missed it. I was looking down at the story. Oh, I could have meant your mother-in-law, Vela. All right. Glad you're back, J-Math. Okay, so there's another story called Singed Moths, which I think we'll go with. All right. Singed Moths. In Yorkshire, England, night moths are called souls. Poor moth, thy fate my own resembles. What gained we, little moth? Thy ashes, thy one brief parting pang may show, and withering thoughts for soul that dashes from deep to deep are but a death more slow. From Carlyle's Tragedy of the Night Moth. Catherine's Diary, June 21st. Waiting for Elizabeth tonight, Charlotte and I sat in silence, unbroken save by the slightest sounds of our work. While I pay court to a new one-eyed despot, I don't know if that means what I think it means. I want to ask if you have thought that this is Midsummer Eve, I asked at last, with a scornful laugh, but feeling more like crying, as I stopped the sewing machine for a new needle. Oh, a needle, okay. Needle's the one-eyed despot. All right. No. Is it? Charlotte answered, with a long sigh, and soon looking up from her desk to add, Now I have spoiled that sheet of legal cap. You made me think of our lawn with colored lanterns, our lace dresses, wide Roman sashes, diamonds and whole pearls, the kind men and fond women, and instead of City and County of San Francisco, I wrote Strauss waltzes and strawberry ices. How could you? Well, said I have been thinking all day of the change. Our gloves and boots too shabby for daylight, hats years old, black silks that knew some of our old tea fights and have to be court plastered like beaten pugilists. Our dread to see things wear out or break because not sure of new ones, even what should pay car fare kept for a loaf of bread. Our only caller, said Charlotte, the landlady, for her rent. Neither time nor money for books or papers. Theater, concert, sail, and drive. Joys for us no more than if we were ghosts. Shunned, said I, except for insult, by those in our old rank of life, as if with our money went our culture, wit, sense, and purity. Innocent souls, said Charlotte, forced to toil 14 or 16 hours a day, while the vile wretch at San Quentin works 8 or 10 and sleeps with no care for food or rent. A steady grind of small economies, I went on, that are both comic and cruel. A struggle for 10 cents worth of flour, 1 candle, 5 cents worth of sugar, 75-cent boots, and 25-cent gloves. Forced to think, said Charlotte, of claims due to the unyielding body, and forget there can be joys the spirit needs. That we ever knew sunrise parties on horseback, garden-shaded hammocks at noon, sea sands at sunset, or serenades by moonlight. In San Francisco, said I, we know neither the fireside glow thrown on our old silver-laden sideboard in winter, nor the foreign travels of our summers, nor the red and yellow woods of fall we saw from the marble-lit terrace overlooking our landscape garden, with its lake and Swiss cottage, where the trees looked as if seen through the stained windows of our great library. Outdoors, said she, we see only wind-blown dust or rain. Indoors, we know our work, and an hysterical sort of good spirits. Our past in the East, I said, is gone like a dream. Folks treat us as though with our lost money went our brains. Not all, said she. Only exceptions that prove the rule, I answered. After another hour of quiet, Charlotte lighted a fire, filled the tea kettle, and spread the cloth. We will have a supper party, she said. Elizabeth will be tired and hungry. If we had flour and a bit of suet, I have nearly forgotten what butter is, we could have some griddle cakes. If we had this or that, we could have the other. What will you have? Broiled chicken, custard pie, and citron cake? Oyster soup, quail on toast, and an omelette soufflé, I replied. If wishes were horses, beggars might ride. If wishes were fishes, we'd have some fried. Perhaps Elizabeth will bring something, said Charlotte, as she set a cup of milk and a 5-cent loaf of bread on the table. She was to get some sewing from the Wortleys. They may give her some cake. Don't, I cried. It vexes my pride to take such gifts. Yet I am so tired of potatoes and salt and milk and water. And owing for the potatoes and milk, said Charlotte grimly. Even the $5 Elizabeth will get for playing for the Wortley's children party ought to go. In how many ways? All to the grocer, or for rent, for coal, for milk, or to get dresses dyed, or, oh dear, it is after 11. She must come soon. Ah, here she is. Elizabeth came upstairs, tired and out of breath, with 2 small jars which she set on the table, saying, More frill and no shirt. Pickles and jam the housekeeper gave me. Good soul, she didn't know what a farce it was, that we had nothing to eat with them, that the scent of dinner in houses I passed going there tonight made me feel ill. We laughed, but our voices were full of tears. In the children's lessons today, said Elizabeth, we read, what I felt as they could not, about the pagan goddess of death, Hell, and the realm of the cold storm. Hunger is her table, starvation her knife, delay her man, slowness her maid, precipice her threshold, care her bed, burning anguish the hangings of her room. Oh, don't, I cried. The water boils. Come, we will play it as tea, but we must sweeten it with smiles, as we have no sugar. No one came to see the room, I suppose, said Elizabeth, as we gathered round the table, though I answered the notice so quickly, nor anyone to take lessons. No, said Charlotte. Nothing has happened except that Biddy has sent us some coal and wood. Think of our old servant coming to own this house, and letting us the upper part, swelling round in a big fur cloak and showing us charity. Bah! Never mind, said Charlotte. Her good heart gave her grace to say the fairies sent it. We are lucky to have such a friend. When I have got word that someone will do the work cheaper, this is the last of my copying. We all sighed. Elizabeth, said I thought Mrs. Wortley was to send some sewing by you. Mrs. Wortley, said Elizabeth, did not like it because I played something more than dance music when asked to by one of her guests, and outshone her daughter. So I have lost my place as governess. Aw, hey Alex. Glad you're here. All right. See, you distracted me, murmuring sweet nothings to me. Charlotte and I groaned. Oh, Charlotte, said Elizabeth, haven't you got some verses to read to us tonight? Charlotte searched her papers and read, Better days. What pathos sounds within the common phrase, On careless tongues they have known better days, as if for them were dimmed the sun's gold rays, the dazzling miracle of winter's snow, the festal pomp of summer's blossom show, were seen by them through veil of somber haze. God help poor souls on whom that burden lays. They walk through narrow, crooked, lonely ways, look on their darkened life in sorrow maze, to care and sorrow and regret fast bound, to toil and moil an endless chain gang round, and almost view the past as madman's craze. Rare is the soul that sympathy betrays, as if they lose claim to blame or praise, or from their poverty contagion strays. Chafed raw by rough and seamy side of life, they stagger, wounded, crippled by the strife, and often lost within the novel maze of all the blessings that the soul portrays, when as the heart-sick and world-wearied prays, we shall sometime see heaven's glories blaze. Naught can surpass the certainty of this, that once within that sphere of perfect bliss, our thoughts can never turn to better days. When Charlotte paused, Elizabeth was crying, but I said, "We will have good times. You must not despair. If you do not marry, I will. I do not mean to dress St. Catherine's hair in the next world, as the old saying has it that a maid must." And I chanted the old prayer. "A husband, St. Catherine, a handsome one, St. Catherine, a rich one, St. Catherine, a nice one, St. Catherine, and soon, St. Catherine." "Position before money," said Elizabeth. "Biddy would say love before money," said Charlotte. "No," said I. "Money, money, money. Think of our heartaches and headaches, not only the picturesque of life, but the comforts denied us, all for lack of money. I would marry the devil if he were rich." "Oh, Catherine," they cried. I would, I said, striking my fist on the table. "One might be tempted," said Elizabeth to Charlotte, who nodded. "There could be inducements," said she. "Hey, we finally found somebody who might marry Hastings." The clock struck 12. The house shook and the windows jarred. "Was that a shock of earthquake?" Charlotte asked. "Only a blast of wind," said Elizabeth. "No," I said. "There is someone knocking at the outside door." "It's too late to open it," said Charlotte. "Nonsense," I cried. "Bright moonlight and three of us. Let us all go. If not fate for one of us, we can be the three fates for him." They unwillingly followed me, but at the last moment I shrank, and it was Elizabeth who opened the door. A man, who did not look quite strange to us, stood on the steps. "Pardon me," he said, taking off his hat. "I followed you from Mrs. Wortley's, but did not start in time to overtake you. I heard you say you had a room to let. Can you excuse my coming at this untimely hour, and let me see it?" We looked at each other. It would not do to lose a chance of a lodger. We let him in. A true American, plain, thin, sharp-faced, alert and confident. He wanted to avoid bad smells. He said he left his last quarters on that account. He took the room, paid a month's rent, and said he would come in the morning. When he had gone, we took hands and danced round our table, spread with Duke Humphrey's dinner. "See what Midsummer Eve has brought us," I cried. At that moment the front door blew open. A wild gust of wind tore through the house and put out the light, and as we felt round in the dark, Charlotte said, "There was something uncanny about that man. I am sorry he is coming." "So am I," said Elizabeth, "but I thought I ought not to say so." "I feel the same," I said, "but is it not as uncanny to be without money?" And over a sputtering candle, burning blue, we all nodded at each other like so many doomed witches. I get the feeling that this author was rather fond of Shakespeare. There seem to be quite a few Shakespearean references here. Charlotte's Diary. August 15th. It does not seem now that less than 2 months ago we were in despair. Mr. Orne's taking of the room, and the ease with which he helped us to work more fit for us, have been such relief. I have gone back to my pictures, and Elizabeth to her music. Catherine picked up in the street some money for which no owner could be found, that has paid half our debts. Our handsome, dark, Spanish-looking lodger, who tells me he is a poor, devil-may-care artist, went with me up on our flat roof tonight to see a fine sunset. Strangely far-sighted, more like eagle than man, he saw things out of the range of most people's vision, and told me of ships far at sea. The great cross on Lone Mountain stood out black against scarlet clouds, while above stretched shadowy shapes as of angels. It reminds me, I said, of an ecstasy of St. Francis of Assisi, and a little chapel of Santa Croce in Milan, a cross standing up dark and strong in shade, a figure in friar's robes borne up in the gloom, as if floating on it, his arms lifted to arms of some vision he sees. He gave one of his odd, scornful laughs. What could the vision tell him, he asked. The angels know all, I said. Not everything, he answered. There are 3 things they do not know. What are they? The day of the second advent, men's hearts, and the number of the elect. Then they have no tongues. I thought I must try to reform this straying soul. Don't you remember your Bible, I asked. I know all about Job, Jethro, and Balaam, he answered. They studied sorcery. This view changes like magic, I said. All may be fog, save where the sun rises, a blood-red ball on its image in the bay. The 2, a huge pillar of fire, like sign and portent. Or, soul rift at noon, a sheet of gold holding the shipping in black outlines. Or sky all blue, the bay looks a brook to be spanned by foot-plank. The city seems of toy houses, the golden gate a mountain-hemmed lake. Or, the city shrunk into a patch of black mist. The bay is a great sheet of quicksilver. Or the city stretches everywhere. Mountains and bays are withdrawn in vague, sad distance. It is like the views one takes in changing moods of the other world. He seemed amused. What do you know of the other world, he asked. As much as anyone. What do you think about it, said I. Nothing, he replied. Wait till you go there yourself. All that has been fancied about it does not near the truth. People are much surprised when they die. And he laughed low and long, as if all to himself at some secret thought. Angels came in dreams in Bible times, I said. I once had a dream which was a great comfort to me. I thought I asked someone if we were immortal and should meet our friends. He answered, You ought to know by your own spirit. Has your spirit never deceived you? Asked our lodger. Does it not daily tell you wrong, for or against things you would do or think? I sighed to own how often my own thought had duped me. What strange power this man has, like a baleful star, to stir doubt in my heart. But my first distrust of him is gone. Instead, he seems more like someone dear to me of old. By a fine sympathy he often seems to know before I speak what I am about to say, as if he reads my mind. If evil, there is also good, I began. He frowned. There is too much light, he cried, and we came indoors. As I went down the stairs, I looked back, saw his swarthy face in the fiery glow of the sunset, and saw for an instant a wonderful model for a picture of the Prince of Darkness. Elizabeth's Diary, August 30th. Our lodger, who proves a thorough musician, though he tells me he is heir to a proud foreign title, seems like an old friend, now I am used to his odd blonde beauty. He took me tonight to hear Faust. It was brought out with more care than often given. The voices sweet and well trained, the acting good, but Mr. Orne was restless, and laughed at it all, and it had not so vivid a charm for me as before, though I shuddered at the weird warnings that in the overture, with mystic awe, hint all the tragic love tale. Where, I asked him, has the music fled when the instrument is broken? It seems like a soul. You do not know, he answered, of any hereafter for your own soul. No, said I, but neither do we know all the hidden chances for bliss or woe in our lives. That we do not know does not make them less there. Swayed by this music, he said, you are not the same person who left home. Self thus made and unmade each moment, one is but a drift of atoms, unlikely to meet again. Is it chance, or are we clockwork, I said, as the opera went on, and I was filled with a sense of the folly of striving against fate. Or are we ruled by unearthly powers, as these instruments are played upon, and forced to yield certain strains? That is not for you to know, he said. Perhaps, said I. Vibrations from angels' choirs jar us like the atoms of Chladni into our places. Then an infernal chorus, said he, may cause the discord of awful crimes? Yes, I said, a spell from hell. What can the real Mephisto think of this stage copy? It is as if a wild bloom tried to be a hothouse flower, he said. How would you like a crude mockery of yourself? As we sat there, I could almost fancy in him a queer, flitting likeness to the Mephistopheles before us, like an image in a brook, shaken and changed by speaking to him. While the music stirred me as wind blows a leaf, I saw so many unmoved faces in the crowd that I asked him, why does the effect of music vary on different persons? Because, said he, in music the unearthly touches the human. Some have no soul, no vital spark to move, like Tyndall's sensitive flame which shrinks at a hiss, thrills at a jar, and leaps at a waltz. Music seems to me, I said, as if we heard a spirit trying to take bodily shape, but failing. Like that Mephisto there, he said, and after we reached home he still scoffed at that singer's make-up and acting. Why, even his laugh, said he, had not the true ring. This is the way he should have looked and laughed, and he donned my cloak, with its tasseled hood above his head in grotesque shape, and gave a wild laugh, which sent cold chills over us, and made Biddy, passing along the hall, stop and cross herself. You have frightened Biddy, I said. Oh no, he said, it is her own soul that scares her. Then he brought his violin, and played Tarantini's Dream for a good night. To make you dream, he told us. How strange it is, I said, that dreams, else forgotten, sometimes come back to us at the sound of music. If they could only be brought again and finished, said Catherine, you might read the letter which lately came to you, Charlotte. What was that? He asked, with keen interest. Charlotte read to him her verses. Unknown. To me what could that note reveal, which glimmered through my dream? Large, white, with an unbroken seal, from whom 'twas sent no gleam. Like planets' wheel our dreams conceal, strange hints of life's hid scheme. Was it from friend and distant star, or one on earth in sleep, or that twin soul whose path lies far from waking glances sweep, or sent to mar all joys that are where dreamland shadows creep? The music score of demon band, or summons to witch ball, or form of compact wily planned, and signed with mystic scrawl, from fairyland or goblin damned, to hold my soul in thrall? Did my good angel send me balm for heart too ill at ease? Perhaps a spray from heavenly palm as a signal of release, or tale of charm in that fair calm to cheer and give me peace? What were its contents, grave or glad? Reply to all I ask, when worn and weary, baffled mad, despairing at life's task, I would have had the reason sad, not wear its iron mask. Was it a message from the dead, of hope or warning sign? Accursed be whatever led my soul from sleep divine, or a note unread in that dream fled, I often muse and pine. Do not open a letter which comes in your sleep, said Mr. Orne, plainly vexed at such nonsense. Evil spirits are as likely to be near as good ones. The world of sleep is their carnival. Charlotte looked pale and startled. Catherine laughed. I do not need to dream, said I. I have other warnings. What sort? He asked eagerly. Oh, a little bird tells me, I said. Take care, said he as he left us. It may be the bird of the Amazon, the lost soul. Biddy gossips. Sit down, Mrs. O'Shane. I can talk in iron too. Do you mind the gentleman who went out as you came in? He's the strange lodger, though he's been here since June, and it's now the middle of September. He is and always will be the strange lodger. The ladies upstairs are all greatly taken with him, but what they can like I can't then. Him with his club foot, his hair in two curls like horns, his sly, cruel eyes, with small whites to them, his foxy pointed ears and claw fingers. The first morning he was here, I was on the front steps, coming from market, when he went out, and the sight of him made me cross myself. He gave me a scowl that was heart scalding, and he seemed to just melt into air like a flash. He was gone so quick, with his flame-coloured hair and whiskers, like the Judas beard in the garden, his hollow back too thin to cast a shadow, and his feet of uneven size. Sure, God's writing is plain enough. And I'm reading it as written, by the way. It gives me a turn to hear his knock, for he'll no touch the bell. It is no work for them to care for his room. He never seems to have moved anything. They wondered why the pint died in the hanging basket in the hall, but I saw him brush by it one day. It was hit that killed it. Then he near crazes me, making the wildest music on his fiddle. It's always the sly lad that takes to playing on that, and there's nothing plain and open about him. The three sisters are charmed with him entirely, but the sight I got of him one night was enough for me, warning for anybody. He had taken Miss Elizabeth to the theatre, and as they came back, he caught her opera cloak and was slipping it from her shoulders to the floor, and threw it over himself with the painted hood up on his head, sticking up like a horn. Oh, what a divil he looked, and I wondered what was in his nose then. And he gave a screech of a laugh that curdled my blood and set my hair on end. Sure, he's one of those ye ought to hate at sight, and ye may know, if ye have much to do with him, you will come to be ready to travel many a hard mile to hear the dirt fall on their coffins. Even the cat there knows more than the three women. Grave and still as she is, she knows what bad spirits have power at Midsummer Eve, and that was the night the queer men came. I tell you, I think he's sort of bewitched the sisters. They even think they are with him when I know they are not. One will be telling me of going to a concert with him the same afternoon. Another says to me she was walking with him, and the other will speak of his being with her here in the house. They are not much better off than before he came, but they think they are. Lone, worried women take odd notions. They are just out of their heads about him, and they'll come to grief, mind you. Mind you, he who eats with the devil has need of a long spoon. Perhaps they think it's in love they are, but it's not love. It's not the feeling I had for Patrick, which made me not care whether he had cabin and pig or not. Don't mind me. I have to wipe away the tears when I think of him, though his grave is far away as Ireland, and 25 years can make it. But when ye have known the real thing, ye can tell what is sham. No, they are thinking of what they'll get, not of the man. Must ye go? Wait till I open the door for you. Stay. Do you see that tall figure, a little lame, skulking up the street in the moonlight? Cape on the other side of the way, and count your beads as you go, and don't look at him, for he has the evil eye. Run now, for he always moves so quick. I can think of nothing but what I once heard the priest say in a sermon, and I beheld Satan like lightning fallen from heaven. Charlotte's Diary, September 30th. Today, Mr. Orrin took me to the park to see the Victoria Regia, like a bit of a sunrise cloud. He bought me a bouquet, but the heat of his hand withered it in a moment. He is so odd, darting here and there. I was speaking of the flower of the Holy Ghost, thinking he was by me, but suddenly found him distant the whole length of the greenhouse. When we came home, he drew the great lily with one or two dashes of his pencil. But, though a true copy, I thought the outline bore, too, an odd likeness to an elfin face, but he talked me out of it. Though St. Cyprian saw the devil in a flower, you need not, he said. You work so quickly, I replied. It makes me think of the devil's crucifix, painted by 2 strokes of his brush in the convent of the Capuchin friars at Rome. He did it for a soul bound to him, and the soul was so struck with its heart-rending truth that he made the sign of the cross and got free. It is well known, he said, the devil would be an artist. Is art an evil power? I asked. Dr. Donne, said he, preached before Oliver Cromwell that the muses were damned spirits of devils. No one can mark where the presence of evil comes and goes. It may be very near, and do not know it. I tried to work on his portrait, but in vain. He changes so much with his moods, and the fire of his eyes is not to be copied. The girls want to see it, but I keep it screened. Today, he was very restless, told me secrets of color thought to have been lost for ages, tossed over my portfolios of sketches and rhymes with mingled praise and blame. He found and read to me. Unfulfilled. The night was dark and wet in long gone age, when Genevieve to mass with maidens went, the gleaming torches carried by a page. Through gusty wind and rain were quickly spent. She touched them, and again their ruddy glare shone on the pious souls who wandered there. No fire of this world, thus the legend ran. 'Twas her same force celestial that could snare the secret thought of man. Upon the gilded tomb of Genevieve, in church of Saint Etienne du Mont, the quaint with airy stare from shadowed aisle to eve, behind a gold grating lies the saint. Forever tapers shine, who buys one tries to send some earnest prayer to paradise. Ah, long I watched its eager changing flare, as hands raised, palm to palm, point toward the sky, my burning, burning prayer. Wind shaken, like my thought that bold aspired, it paused, drooped, fainting, rose again, implored, while I, like frantic moth, all my desire, cast on the flame that yearningly adored. Around my sacred hope this aureole became a steady beacon for my soul, and through long years of darkness and despair, its cheering rays athwart my care would roll, my glowing, glowing prayer. At last, like smoke wreath poising over flame, the shadow of my hope loomed just in view, but floated off, nor ever nearer came. Was it within my sway for joy or rue? Who shall define the bounds of will or fate, man's choice or hand of providence debate? To lose it was to see hell's lurid flashes, and heaven is to find there incarnate my prayer that burned to ashes. The strange smile that curled his lip made me in despair throw down my brush. There the Catholics are like the followers of Confucius, said he, who think what is burned rises to the next world. Do you recall the devil of human size on the outer gallery of Notre Dame in Paris? Do you think he watches the smoke of the city to know what people want? Eastern tales are nearer right that keep him in ruins and desert places. Like the mines he wrecks or lays waste. He flashed upon me a glance of keen question, then bent again over the sketchbook. He found a photograph of my favorite, Paolo and Francesca, falling forever and ever, murky shadows reaching from below to engulf them, the light of lost paradise streaming from above, a troop of filmy forms in the background watching. Is it not the worst of all for each that they must both go? I asked. Would not their parting be worse? Said he. No, that is not hell. With his swift pencil he sketched some woeful figures looking back, one who sees his bosom friend forget him, one who knows his foe pleased at his death, one who finds his secrets come to the gaze of the world, one who learns that the woman for love of whom he died loves and regrets him. Hell, he said, is to keep the same passions without the human frame in which to show them, to be in your old haunts and see things going against your wishes with no power to hinder. No dropping through bottomless pit, no raging flame could be worse. What would you choose for heaven? To look back, I said, and see at least one of my pictures live on. I would give my soul for that. He clasped my hand as if to close a compact, and, as the other arm went round my waist, he said, but your own image, mirrored in the soul that loves you, may be more lasting. I felt his fiery kiss upon my mouth. Bewildered, I could have believed that over his shoulder I saw the figures in his sketches beginning to dance and jeer at me. I shrank back. At that moment, Catherine and Elizabeth burst in where we were, like jealous sisters in a fairy tale. Catherine's diary. October 15th. I went with Mr. Orne to a ball last night. The girls helped me dress, and each lent of her best, but I was so dazed with the strain of trying to look gay, while dulled by the vain struggle to feel well in our old worn things, that all the hours I was gone, though I seemed to see rich robes of Flanders lace and Genoa velvet he had sent for me to wear. Yet I was mindful how Elizabeth had warned me of some carefully darned lace that would not bear a touch, and Charlotte had dyed an old sash ribbon and painted flowers over stains, and we had all sighed over the whole. But here I was, as if in a leaf far back in the book of my life, in full dress once more, whirling with a rich and gay escort down a long hall of dancers, the band playing the Lucifer waltzes, my partner booing me clear of the crowd. He seems to know everyone. He was nodding right and left. I would cry, "Why, do you know him?" "Intimately," he would answer. And once, as he said so, the voice of a passing dancer reached our ears and made us smile. The devil is nearer a man than his coat or his shirt. He slipped on my finger a ring set with an opal of occult power and mystic fire, like the lurid light in his eyes. And when I said, "I like a pearl with a soul in it," he replied, "That is its very charm for me, the soul in it," looking at me as if he could will my very soul from me. I heard people groan that the supper was gone, but he brought me dainties in plenty, and unlike what others had found. I heard him jesting in many languages with this or that one, well known and liked by all. He told me he had just made a fortune in mining stocks. As I sipped and played with my spoon, caught the witch gleam of my opal, felt pleased with the fine mesh of my laces, the shadow and glow of my velvet, I felt that to gain all such spendthrift wants of mine would make heaven of earth. Then the man went by who had quoted Luther. Was the devil so near? Who was our strange lodger who filled my mind with such wild thoughts, like an evil planet drawing forth all the bad in my nature? Then I forgot my doubts in the swift whirl of music and dance. As we stood on our steps and he searched for his latchkey, I watched the fire of my opal, burning like a will-o'-the-wisp in the moonlit dark. "It has a weird life of its own," I cried, and, fearing my sister's eyes of wonder and envy, "Take it," I said. "Not without you," he answered, bending over me, and a sudden, brief kiss scorched my lips. Then the girls who had sat up for us and heard the carriage had opened the door and swept us upstairs with them. I could have thought them jealous by the way Charlotte cried, "You look changed in some way, like a shining spirit against a dark cloud." And Elizabeth added, "It does not matter much about your dress after all." I stood before our bureau glass. It showed me the darned lace and dyed ribbon with which they had dressed me. Had I imagined my fine things? Perhaps I had but fancied the ball, the lights and music, and my lover. The ring was gone. And then the next I knew, they had undressed me and put me in bed, and Elizabeth was cooling my head with damp cloths, while Charlotte was fanning me, and I heard them murmur together as if far off. What did she mutter about a ring set with a spark from hell? Elizabeth asked, and Charlotte answered, that she was sealed to Satan. All right, not too much longer, I don't know. We're going to have to finish this one later, as we've gone over time and there's quite a bit left of it. Is that all right with everyone? Come back and hear some more next time. So, how does this author stack up to Mr. Lovecraft and Mr. Hodgson? What do you guys think? You like her? Me too. You know, I could finish this particular one tomorrow if you guys would like. I could do that. It's got enough poetry to qualify as our poetry before the book. Well, then I'll just go ahead and do it Friday then. That's fine. That was the initial plan. I was willing to be persuaded otherwise. But yeah, we'll pick it up next Friday and continue with Weird Fiction Friday. I've got a whole list of female authors and other authors who are kind of forgotten, buried by time, that were known in their day, but not really carried forward for us to explore, so that we can get some weird fiction that's not all about Mr. Lovecraft. I hope everyone enjoyed. Thank you so much for coming out. And if you did enjoy, pretty please click that follow button. We are trying to get to 75 followers by the end of the month. Close out the year with 75. That would be amazing. I enjoy it, JMath. I really do. This is, to be honest, with all the things that have gone on this year and I don't do well when I have nothing to do. And because of the disabilities, there's restrictions on what I'm able to do. Many things that I can't, limitations that I didn't have for the greater part of my life. And in order to keep from dwelling on those and to still do something, I've volunteered in my community and taught and other things. But with the pandemic and everything that's gone on this year, I haven't been able to do that. And I was admittedly getting really depressed for a while. And this has changed that. This has been really good for me, and I'm glad it's good for you too. It's given me something to focus on and do, and a way to still give to the community, even if I have to build that community myself. But I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be here with all of you. So thank you for this opportunity, everyone. I really do appreciate it. Do click that follow button, help us get to the goal. Come hang out with us in the Discord and chat with us. We do some gaming there pretty regularly too during the week. And you can come play games with us. It's a pretty chill, relaxed group. Good conversation, good people to meet. So I do hope you join and connect, not just with me, but with everybody. And yeah, you can find the older stuff on YouTube. And I am selecting poems and such to read for more short form content that'll be exclusive to the YouTube. So it'll be well worth subscribing and checking it out. Yeah, JMatt's met quite a few people in the Discord and has played some games with us. Vela's been in there too, and Gecko is, she was a bit shy at first, calling you out on that there, Gecko. But she's come in and met a couple of people and seemed to have a good time. So please do come join us. Thank you again, everyone, and let's go find an art stream or something to raid. All right. Do we have anybody we know? Maybe not that one. Look at the art streams, and if anybody sees a good one, call it out in the chat, and we'll check it out real quick. I'm looking too. We'd all hunt together. Did I scroll past them? That's Beauty and Body Art. Not quite what I was looking for. There it is. Went right past it. Look for somebody that's maybe not too big, not too small either, though. We'll go for the Goldilocks streamer, the one that's just right. I admit I tend to try to avoid the anime and the miniatures. I am maybe a bit of a traditionalist looking for paint and canvas. Anybody see anything interesting yet? Nothing's wrong with digital art. Nothing at all. What is this one? I'm checking one out real quick once the advertisements go away anyway. Anytime now. I'm so glad that I didn't go affiliate and you guys don't have to suffer through these pre-rolls. You said Freakmeister? Check that one out. And this one's kind of pin art. Is it not playing? There we go. Oh, I mean, right, but Bob Ross isn't really a streamer. It's just pre-roll recorded stuff. All right. So the dog is awesome, and then there's also Clear Cadence, who is drawing Tim the Enchanter from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and doing pen and ink with somebody else. So, what do you think? Freakmeister 1 with dog, or Clear Cadence with pen and ink? Bob Ross is awesome, but he has passed away, and it is somebody rolling pre-recorded stuff. I'm looking more for a live streamer, personally. So, Clear Cadence or Freakmeister? First 3 votes, and I'll pick that one. We won't wait for a majority. It's the first 3 people to pick in favor of one of them. All right, 1 for Freakmeister, 2 for Freakmeister. Can we get one more? Dang is not dog. Not outvoted yet. We're waiting for a third. JMatt said pen and ink. Okay. 2-1. Need 1 more for dog, or 2 more for pen and ink. Going once. Going twice. Sold. We're going to go to the dog artist. Freakmeister it is. Sorry, Sparky, a little too late. I had already called it, and besides, it only brought it up 2-2. All right, I'm going to go ahead and in the stream. I'll chat with him for a little bit, and then I may see some of you in Discord.